Hello everyone and welcome to Underwater Adventures with Alex Mirabal. Today we are bringing the second part of an episode that we already made, which is the shocking discoveries you made on shipwrecks. As I mentioned in the other episode in the first part, shocking discoveries means when you find artifacts which you either don't know what they are or they are alien to the context of the shipwreck or they look alien to the context of the shipwreck. So I hope you like this video and let's dive into it.
Hey everyone! If you want to watch the video in other languages, you simply click on Settings, go to Subtitles, select the subtitles in the original language, then go back to Subtitles, activate the Translate automatically, and scroll down and select your preferred language. In this case, we chose Spanish, obviously. Thank you so much all, and let's get on with the video.
The first artifacts which I want to bring to your attention, it was found in a shipwreck that we were exploring in Indonesia between the island of Belitung and Karimata or Kalimantan in the Karimata Strait. This was a very peculiar wreck because it has an ensemble of artifacts and objects in general in the ship that it was quite difficult for us to pinpoint in which date or from which country it belongs. So it was surprising to find pretty much anachronic objects in it. First, it was a ship, the remains of the ship that you see on the seabed. It had two cannons, which were obviously of European production. It had coinage, silver coins, some from Europe and some from India, most probably because they were the writing on the coins was not European. It had pistols, which is something that you only find is a normal pistol that you are used to see in the pirate movies and stuff. These are 19th century handguns or stock weapons. And it also had a beautiful box made of copper, which then later was identified as tobacco box. So it was a little box with a lid, a very ornamented one, very nice. You will see it in the photos where they had tobacco, I think in powder, and then they smell it. Well, everything was going normal in the exploration of the wreck till we found a celadon bowl. Celadon is a type of ceramic that was starting to be manufactured in China. But the problem with celadon is that celadon almost finished the production, the mass production of celadon was almost finished before the 1500s, meaning 14th century, 13th century were the moments where celadon was quite popular. It is greenish, it's not white and blue as we know from the Chinese porcelain of later on, but it was a greenish color, very high quality ceramic. So we have a wreck that we all understood like, okay, it should be European because it has most of the artifacts are of European origin and the Europeans were not there yet in 1400s. So what is a celadon plate doing there? And then we already investigated the few artifacts that we took a sample from the wreck. We discovered that from the coins, the silver coins that were in the wreck, there were few, like 5 silver coins. One was Dutch from 1753, right? 1753, my memory is getting good. And the other one, which is inscribed in Arabic characters, it has the date 1800, 1800. And then it got a little bit more confusing because if the ship sank forcibly after 1800, then this celadon object, this celadon bowl, will have more than 300 years old when the ship went down. What was this object doing in the ship? Would they already collecting curiosities, or it was an utilitarian object that would last 300 years? It was puzzling for us to try to understand what was that object doing there.
What do you think the ship was? Meaning, like, what do you think they were doing if they were able to have so many random objects inside of the same ship?
Well, we have been handling many many working hypotheses because it didn't look like a trader. A normal trader would have a sensible amount of repetitive artifacts because it's inherent to the trade.
Yeah.
Either would be porcelain or would be copper or would be tin or would be coins, any object that will have repetitive. So it didn't look like a trader. The cannons were small in comparison to the cannons of the European ships of that time. They were small, meaning that it was not also a warship, and it also had two cannons. The wreck was reasonably deep, about 20 some meters, so it's not very likely that they would have recovered the cannons after the accident. It has Dutch coins, Arabic coins, Chinese porcelain, ceramic. They also have a couple of Chinese coins.
Yeah.
So the remains of the ship in the area that we found, they were also such a small area that pointed to a relatively small ship.
Yeah.
So the last hypothesis we were managing was, okay, it should have been a pirate ship. It looks, if it would have been a pirate ship, it will tick some of the marks and explain some of the things. Obviously, it is very difficult to guess based on the artifacts or the remains of the ship what it was.
Sure.
But it's like a feasible option that could have been a pirate ship. Certainly was not any of the government ships of the time of any nation around.
Would that also maybe explain why only two cannons?
It may that they would only have two cannons because they fetch them from another ship that they attack, or that the ship was small and then with two cannons they felt that it was enough, or it would have been too heavy if you put more cannons in the ship. So everything points to a small ship with a very funny group of artifacts together. Collection. So that makes you think about piracy.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was, but it is as good as option as any other.
Yeah, as good as a theory as any. Yeah.
Exactly. So if any of you guys have also, my colleagues who work in Southeast Asia and have a lot of experience in this kind of finds, they may shed some light in the presence of such long ago manufactured object into a wreck that you already can pinpoint in a certain date. If you have any information like that, please leave it into a comment. You can talk with us that way, so I will be checking to see if we can understand a little bit better that site. Another quite interesting object, it was found this time in Mozambique in the San Jose wreck from 1622, and to my opinion it looks like a grindstone. It is similar to grindstone, but it has three legs. You will see in the photos and the drawings. It has three legs. The upper part, which is flat, it has some texture on it, so it will suggest the function of grinding and pressing any material. But interesting enough, it has also a small channel like to evacuate liquids. What do we thought when we find it? And it's very crude, it's very, very rudimentary manufacture. It's not something that would come out of any foundry or any mold or anything. So it was a little bit surprising for us to find this first, because I haven't found any other similar objects in any wreck. We have found grindstones many times. Normally grindstones are different, are like these big wheels and with the hole in the middle that we know how the grind mill would work. But this in a small size, something that you could use in the kitchen, for instance, to, let's say, press olives and take the oil out or something similar. Obviously, I think it's missing the upper part. We only found the lower half of it, not the upper part that will press whatever they were pressing with that. And it looked also, and this is just only a matter of appreciation, it looks much older than a 1622 context, in which also was the San Jose was the admiral ship of the Portuguese fleet, very powerful, and they had most of the objects were of very good quality. So this looked a little bit puzzling because of the context in which was found. So if any of you have a similar, you will see the photos, you will see the drawings, or you are seeing the drawings, I think very often. And if you have seen anything similar, please let me know. I am very interested in to know what this could have been. And now I come to some very funny objects. They're also found in a wreck in Mozambique. A few objects will be found in the same wreck in the Nossa Senhora de Consolação, sunk in 1608 during an attack from the Dutch to the island of Mozambique, and they sunk the Nossa Senhora de Consolação right in the entry channel of the bay. And Nossa Senhora de Consolação, it gave us 2 or 3 artifacts which were very peculiar. One of those was this group of little pieces of copper of a very interesting manufacture that we started finding inside the concretion. There was a piece of concretion with iron, probably from cannonballs and some structural part of the ships, and these little copper things were within the concretion. When we start cleaning the concretion and taking these copper objects out, we were all surprised by the shape of these objects. We didn't know what they were. Actually, to me, they looked slightly familiar, but I couldn't identify if I have seen that before or where did I saw it, because they were obviously copper within a metal concretion from iron. It will stay in very good conditions. We were able, even before conservation, and then after conservation even more, we could see that they were somehow decorated, that they have little attaching holes, and all of them or most of them were actually different. So we were thinking they were ornaments or something. It was
So what is the process when you find something that you don't know exactly what it is? And how do you keep record of it if you don't have a name for it?
Well, in archaeology, as methodology, we consider that this could happen quite often.
Yeah.
When you are excavating an archaeological complex, you will come across things that you don't know what they are. And many of them in maritime archaeology, many of the objects, they come concreted, they come misshaped. You cannot identify the object right away. You have to wait for the conservation center to finish its job. So there are like broad terms in which you save in the database, in that you record these objects. In this case, we call it copper alloy ornaments.
So you try to find the material and what it could have been used for to at least record it.
Yes, because
keep record of it.
Exactly. But yes, because one of the things that you want to fulfill in your database is in which group of objects
they belong.
Being domestic items, personal belongings, artillery, or
decoration, whatever,
ordnance, cargo. So you have these subdivisions and then you try to fit it in. But it is totally normal that you could say a concreted object with no obvious function. There are even many times that you cannot recognize which material is made.
Sure.
When you have a concreted, but you assume it's a metal because of the way that we use many times a magnet. Just to find out if it's iron or if it's non-ferrous metal. So yes, you keep, but your database, you're updating it. And when the artifact comes out of the lab of the conservation center, you already have a much better idea, even if you don't know what they are, but you can describe them better.
Yeah.
And this you do. When the conservator brings the artifacts back, the clean artifacts, the stable artifacts, you then go back to the original record and you
fix
add.
Add.
No, you add. You don't delete. You add.
Okay.
You just add. Keep the thinking process
written down.
So within the team, we call these little objects the little guitars because they look to us like guitars. The answer to my many questions, because I kept this thing nagging on me that I have seen that before. I didn't remember where, how do I came across this. So some months later, I went to the archive to search information on another shipwreck. And in the archive, I saw these old books with a leather cover that they have these book clasps, which is that they used to either to put in the corners of the binding of the book, and another one that is to close the book. I mean, you close the book and you put like a sort of latch to close it, and the ones I saw in the archive were exactly like the ones that we have found in the wreck, and I was like, yeah, that's what I knew. That in the archives, obviously I've been in the archives many times, although it's not my main work, but I have been in the archives many times, and obviously I have seen these old volumes that has these beautiful book clasps making copper as well. So that one at least was solved, but I wanted to bring it because it was a very funny process in how do we got to the information that we needed. Also in Nuestra Señora de Consolación, we found another object which has been an enigma to me. It is a small flat stick, like a ruler, that it has a flat ear in the end, and it has scale in both sides, in both faces. When we found it, I mean, it's a little piece of copper, a little piece of copper that when it was still without conservation, you couldn't see the scales on both sides of the object. Once we cleaned it up and it was ready to be studied, I realized that these scales were not even. The separation in the marks of each of the scales, it didn't have the same distance one to the other. So they were like growing as they were going down in the instrument. And in the backside, it has the same situation, but with the different units or different sizes. Very intriguing. The first hypothesis, the first theory that we came up with, it was like it was used to measure liquid or something in some recipient, and it would be like liters or gallons or any liquid unit measurement. But with these odd scales that it had, we have to think that, okay, the recipient in which this liquid would be in, it has to be very strange in shape, in form, because otherwise it is not coherent how you can measure this. It took us a long time. I tried with other publications because I saw some similar objects that would not have exactly the same divisions, but they look pretty much similar, and it might have been because this difference going out to the end of the object, it imply like angular distances. So something that you would use to measure angles, which in that case, it is incredible how develop, how sophisticated these guys were in the 17th century.
I was just going to ask, I cannot imagine even today a specific thing I would need to measure angles on my day-to-day meaning,
yeah, okay.
let alone at that time.
Yeah. But for them it was important because if you will aim a cannon to something, you would need to know the trajectory of the projectile.
Sure.
And angles are important for that. It looks small to be used in the middle of a battle. It looks like something that can be like, oops, where is my angle measurement? And then you will be shooting. You will be shooting everyone widely. But it has been so far the best option we have found. I'm sure some of you have seen something similar. Please pay attention to the images because some of you would have seen something similar or have experienced or have got through a research that I haven't seen. Please let me know if you have this information. I will be very glad. And the last artifact I want to bring into the attention is also in Nuestra Señora de Consolación, and it's like a very curious find, and I want to share it with you. The first shocking thing in this artifact is how Boris, my friend and diver and a captain of most of my expeditions, how could he find it? Because it was also in a concreted area of the shipwreck, right down to the timbers of the hull that they survived. I will make a video on the Nuestra Señora de Consolación because the wood structure is super interesting and it's super uncommon to find in tropical waters, but this is another video. And in the moment that he found this object, it looked like everything but what it was, because then it turned out to be a beautiful statue or sculpture of Christ in the crucifixion position, made of pewter but with a high content of lead. So the proportion between lead and tin, it was of a very high quality. That's what I meant. So it was after conservation became a really nice figure and a very nice sculpture to admire because it was made with such detail. And originally when he found it, that was almost impossible to guess because it was all misshapen, it was all covered in concretion, it was impossible. But he certainly had a good eye because he found it. And the most impressive part of this, and that's why I'm bringing this object here to the video, is the level of detail that this sculpture had in the back of the statue. The part that was certainly going against the crucifix. So it's a part that you will not see if you have a crucifix hanging on your cabin or on your house. It was too big to wear it, but it would have been a very nice religious icon in your room or in your office or in the ship somewhere, but it would have a crucifix behind. Obviously, the crucifix, being wood, most probably is gone, but the statue now, you can see the back and you can see all the muscles and everything very nicely made. And it struck me a little bit, it surprised me because I said, I wonder why this artist, it took so much time and detail to make it so realistic, even in the back of something that you will not see it. It would have been made in mass production. You will have a flat back because it's something that goes against a wall or a crucifix of wood that you will not see. But I don't know, I assume it was out of...
I was gonna say probably back then, and just using maybe the little knowledge that I might have here, back then being religious is very important. You take it very seriously. It's kind of like a way of respecting the craft of what you're doing, is being extremely detailed. Perhaps with another figure that might not have been religious, they might have not put so much, but it kind of would have been like a reflection of their craft and their admiration. maybe back then it was blasphemous to not put a back of Jesus, yeah, honestly.
Maybe I thought in the same line, because for a deeply religious society and the artist is part of that society, you are replicating the figure of a very important icon. I assume you should treat it with the utmost respect.
That's what I think.
And maybe, as you said, it was totally forbidden to leave Jesus without a back or a flat back.
To cut corners. You don't cut corners in Jesus statue. You cut corners on other stuff if you want.
Exactly. But I wanted to bring this artifact to the attention because you may also have these answers. While we are talking, you may also have these answers. You may have studied that and come up with the answer that say, no, Alex, for sure that they couldn't have made Jesus if it's not in the best way possible.
We're just assuming, but if you guys know for sure, please let us know.
Yeah. Okay, so I hope you liked the video. We will be checking the comments very intensively because I really hope that some answers here and the previous video of the shocking discoveries and shipwreck will bring us a little bit more information and we all gain. So keep in touch and keep on diving.